Most people picture the Wild West as a place defined by gunfights, bank robbers, and dusty showdowns in frontier towns. But for the average working cowboy, the deadliest enemy was often something far less dramatic. It was the trail itself. Imagine standing at dawn beside a herd of thousands of restless cattle. Ahead lies hundreds of miles of open country, with no guarantee of shelter, supplies, or help. The journey could take weeks, sometimes even months. Every sunrise brought a new challenge, and every sunset offered no promise that tomorrow would be easier. The heat could be relentless, baking the ground until every step kicked up clouds of choking dust. Then, without warning, a storm might roll across the plains, turning dry earth into mud and sending lightning crashing into the darkness. Nights could become bitterly cold, leaving exhausted riders shivering beneath the open sky. Rivers that looked calm from a distance could suddenly become deadly obstacles, sweeping away livestock, horses, and sometimes the men trying to cross them. Food was limited, water was never guaranteed. Sleep often came in short, interrupted stretches. A cowboy might spend days soaked by rain, blinded by dust, or worn down by sheer exhaustion. If something broke, was lost, or went wrong, there was rarely anyone nearby to help. Out on the frontier, a simple problem could quickly become a life-threatening one. That reality taught cowboys a lesson that every experienced trailhand understood. Survival was not about being the fastest draw or the bravest fighter. It was about preparation. The men who successfully reached their destination were often the ones who carried the right tools and knew exactly how to use them. And as we're about to see, the most valuable possessions a cowboy owned were often not expensive, complicated, or impressive. They were simple items that could solve countless problems when the nearest town was hundreds of miles away. In many cases, these humble tools were the difference between completing the journey and becoming another forgotten story of the frontier. Before we pull the trigger on today's story, if you're a fan of vintage steel and frontier grit, make sure you're subscribed. Now, let's head into the smoke. Number 5 was the cowboy's knife. And despite all the legends surrounding six-shooters and gunfights, this simple tool was often far more important to survival than any revolver. A cowboy could go weeks without drawing a gun, but he might use his knife dozens of times every single day. On a long cattle drive, nearly everything eventually needed cutting, carving, slicing, or shaping. When it came time to prepare a meal, a knife was essential. When supplies arrived tied with rope, the knife opened them. When leather straps needed trimming or adjustment, the knife handled the job. It was such a constant companion that many cowboys treated it like an extension of their own hand. The real value of a knife became clear when something went wrong. Imagine a rider hundreds of miles from the nearest town when a piece of saddle gear suddenly tears loose. Without a quick repair, controlling a horse could become difficult or even dangerous. A sturdy knife allowed a cowboy to cut replacement leather, shape a wooden peg, trim rope, and get moving again before a small problem became a disaster. The same tool could also be used to clean game after a hunt, sharpen wooden stakes for camp, cut kindling for a fire, or handle unexpected emergencies on the trail. Because of that, appearance meant very little. Cowboys cared far more about strength and reliability than fancy decoration. A plain blade that held an edge was worth far more than an impressive-looking knife that failed when it was needed most. On the frontier, survival depended on practical tools that could solve many different problems, and few items proved that better than the humble cowboy knife. But as important as a knife was, it was only one piece of the survival kit that kept cattle drives moving across the vast and unforgiving West. Number 4 was the lariat rope, a tool so closely associated with cowboys that many people assume its only purpose was catching cattle. In reality, a good rope was one of the most versatile survival tools on the entire trail. Every cowboy knew that sooner or later, something would need to be tied down, pulled free, secured, or rescued. A lariat handled all of those jobs. Of course, it was used to control cattle, but its value extended far beyond the herd itself. Horses could become injured or trapped in difficult terrain, supplies might shift during travel. Equipment could slide down steep slopes. In each situation, a sturdy rope often became the fastest and safest solution. Imagine a horse slipping near a ravine and becoming stuck where it couldn't climb out on its own. Without a reliable rope, recovering the animal could be nearly impossible. The same was true when wagons became mired in mud after heavy rain, or when frightened cattle scattered during a storm. A skilled cowboy could quickly turn his lariat into a lifeline, restoring order before a bad situation became a disaster. What made these ropes so valuable was their strength and durability. Trail life was hard on equipment, and a rope that snapped under pressure could have serious consequences. Cowboys depended on tightly braided fibers that could withstand constant use, rough weather, and heavy loads. Their lives often depended on it. Perhaps most importantly, experienced cowboys learned dozens of practical uses for a rope. It provided control, flexibility, and security in an unpredictable environment where help was rarely close at hand. Out on the frontier, a simple coil of braided fiber could solve problems that brute strength alone never could. And the next tool on our list was just as essential when the weather. Number 3 was fire-making equipment. And on a long cattle drive, few things were more valuable than the ability to create fire whenever conditions turned against you. Out on the open range, daylight brought challenges, but night often brought danger. Temperatures could drop dramatically after sunset, especially on the plains and in higher elevations. A cowboy who spent the day sweating under the sun might find himself shivering just a few hours later. In those moments, a small flame could mean the difference between comfort and misery, and sometimes even survival. That is why experienced trail riders carefully protected their flint, matches, and other fire-starting tools. These items might seem insignificant, but they were among the most important possessions in camp. Starting a fire on a calm evening was one thing. Starting one after a rainstorm, in strong wind, or with damp wood was something else entirely. Cowboys learned quickly that a wet match or poorly protected fire kit could become a serious problem when temperatures began to fall. A successful fire solved countless challenges. It provided warmth through cold nights, cooked meals after exhausting days in the saddle, and dried clothing soaked by rain or river crossings. It also brought light to otherwise dark campsites and helped keep wildlife at a distance. Even questionable water could be made safer by boiling it over the flames. But fire offered more than physical survival. At the end of a hard day's drive, cowboys gathered around campfires to eat, talk, share stories, and discuss the next day's route. The glow of the flames created a rare sense of comfort in an otherwise harsh and uncertain world. On the frontier, the ability to create life from a few sparks was a skill every cowboy respected. And as essential as fire was, the next tool helped ensure a cowboy could continue the journey when his most important partner, the horse, needed care. Number 2 was the canteen, a tool that helped cowboys fight a threat far deadlier than most outlaws ever were. In the Old West, dehydration killed far more people than gunfights, and every experienced trail rider understood that water was life. A cattle drive could cross vast stretches of dry country where water was scarce and unreliable. Under the blazing summer sun, cowboys spent long hours in the saddle, breathing dust and working livestock across open plains. Sweat drained precious moisture from their bodies, and every mile increased the importance of the water they carried with them. The challenge wasn't simply finding water, it was making sure there was enough of it. A rider who emptied his canteen too quickly might face hours or even an entire day before reaching the next reliable source. During drought years, the situation became even worse. Streams could shrink, watering holes could dry up, and routes that normally supported cattle drives suddenly became dangerous. Imagine a cowboy riding beneath relentless heat with no shade in sight. His horse is tiring, the herd is slowing, and the nearest known water source is still miles away. At that moment, the canteen hanging from his saddle isn't just equipment, it's survival itself. Every sip has to be carefully measured because once the water is gone, there may be no second chance. This is why experienced trail bosses planned routes around rivers, creeks, and watering holes. They knew that poor planning could put both men and livestock at serious risk. Running out of ammunition was a problem. Running out of water could be fatal. The humble canteen may not have looked impressive, but it carried the single resource every living thing on the trail depended on. And that brings us to the most important survival tool of all, the one no cowboy could hope to complete a long drive without. And finally, number 1 was the bedroll, a piece of equipment so ordinary that it's often overlooked today. Yet for a cowboy on a long cattle drive, it was one of the most important survival tools he owned. When most people think of the Old West, they picture endless days beneath a blazing sun. What they often forget is what happened after dark. Once the sun disappeared below the horizon, temperatures could drop quickly. Cold winds swept across the open plains. Storms rolled in without warning, and the hard ground offered little comfort after 12 or 14 exhausting hours in the saddle. For weeks or even months at a time, the bedroll served as a cowboy's shelter, mattress, and blanket all in one. Typically made from durable canvas wrapped around blankets and personal gear, it could be rolled tightly for transport and quickly unrolled when camp was made for the night. Simple as it looked, it provided crucial protection from cold, moisture, dust, and insects. Imagine finishing a long day after driving cattle through rain and mud. Your clothes are damp, your muscles ache, and tomorrow's journey begins before sunrise. Without a dry place to rest and preserve body heat, exhaustion would quickly begin to take its toll. A good bedroll helped a cowboy recover enough strength to face another demanding day on the trail. That is why experienced trail hands understood something many people overlook today. Comfort was not a luxury, it was a necessity. A cowboy who couldn't rest properly became slower, weaker, and more vulnerable to mistakes. In an environment where small problems could quickly become life-threatening, even sleep became a survival resource. And when you look at all 5 of these tools together, the knife, the lariat, fire-making equipment, the canteen, and the bedroll, they reveal an important truth about the Old West. Cowboys survived not because of dramatic gunfights or legendary bravery, but because they carried simple, practical tools that helped them endure one of the harshest environments in American history. When most people think about the Old West, they imagine revolvers, shootouts, and legendary outlaws. But as we've seen, the reality of frontier life was often much less glamorous and far more demanding. The cowboys who drove cattle across hundreds of miles of open country faced challenges that had little to do with gunfights. Their greatest enemies were exhaustion, bad weather, rough terrain, thirst, hunger, and isolation. Success depended not on dramatic displays of courage, but on preparation and the ability to solve problems with whatever tools were available. Each of the 5 tools we've explored played a vital role in that struggle. A sturdy knife handled countless daily tasks, from preparing food to making emergency repairs. The lariat provided control, safety, and a way to overcome obstacles that would otherwise stop a drive in its tracks. Fire-making tools transformed a few sparks into warmth, light, cooked meals, and protection during long nights on the range. The canteen carried the most essential resource of all, helping cowboys survive in regions where water could be separated by many difficult miles. And the bedroll provided shelter, rest, and protection from the elements, allowing trail riders to recover and continue the journey day after day. What makes these tools remarkable is their simplicity. None were especially complicated, yet each solved multiple survival problems at a time when replacement equipment was often unavailable. That versatility was essential in a world where every pound carried had to earn its place. Hollywood often celebrates the men who were quickest to draw a revolver. But the true legends of the trail were usually the cowboys who mastered these ordinary tools, adapted to whatever the frontier threw at them, and successfully brought both themselves and their herds home safely. In the end, it wasn't firepower that conquered the frontier, it was resourcefulness. The West is full of legends, and we're documenting every single one. Join the ranks by hitting that subscribe button and smash the like if you enjoyed this ride. Thanks for riding along. See you on the next trail.